The wind cut across the runway, sharp with the salt of the sea. The northern defense base stretched across the coast like a sleeping metal beast, rows of hangars glinting under the morning sun. A jeep rolled through the front gate, its tires crunching over gravel, stopping in front of the administration block. She stepped out quietly. Boots hit the ground with measured confidence, though she carried herself like she wanted no attention. The name patch on her uniform read Holt, T. Her bag was small, no extra gear, no clutter, just the essentials. A guard at the gate gave her a quick nod. "First day, ma'am?" "Something like that," she said. Inside, the base was already alive with motion. Radio chatter, clipped orders, and the low thrum of distant aircraft. She moved through it unnoticed, just another transfer officer, or so they thought. That was exactly how she wanted it. In the operations building, a few officers were gathered near the coffee machine. Laughter burst from their corner as she walked past. "Guess command's getting desperate. They're sending in trainees now." She heard it, didn't react. Instead, she kept walking, her steps perfectly timed, like someone used to moving through chaos without needing to announce herself. Captain Reese looked up from his desk when she entered the briefing room. "You must be the new logistics coordinator," he said, half a smirk on his face. "Welcome to the madhouse." "Thank you, sir," she said, extending a hand. He shook it, firm, testing her grip. She didn't flinch. Reese leaned back in his chair. "We run things a little rough here. You keep up, you'll be fine. You don't? Well," he shrugged. "It's a tough crowd." "I'll manage," she said simply. He laughed. "That's what they all say." For the rest of the day, she worked quietly, studying charts, reading patrol logs, listening more than speaking. Every now and then she'd jot down small notes, coordinates, radar frequencies, personnel names. The others thought she was just trying to learn the ropes, but she wasn't. She was mapping everything. By evening, the sky turned deep amber over the base. She walked out to the observation deck where the coastline met the horizon. From up there, she could see every part of the base, the flight hangars, the control towers, the dockyards. It was old, underfunded, sloppy in places, and yet it was hers now. Behind her, footsteps. "You know that view never gets old," said the voice. Lieutenant Harris, young, overly confident, the type who mistook charm for respect. "You're settling in okay?" She nodded. "Slowly." "Good," he said, stepping closer. "Word of advice, don't take Reese too seriously. He thinks this place runs because of him. It doesn't." "Then who does it run for?" He laughed. "Nobody knows. Some high brass somewhere keeps the lights on, I guess." She smiled faintly. "Maybe you'll find out someday." The next morning, things shifted. During a systems check, she caught a minor inconsistency in the comm logs, a delay in encrypted traffic between the satellite array and command post. She flagged it, but the technician brushed it off. "Signal lag," he said. "Happens all the time." But she didn't move on. She watched the monitors, noticed the timing. Regular, every 47 minutes, precisely. That wasn't random. It was a pattern. Later that afternoon, she visited the radar room. The techs were relaxed, half distracted, coffee cups everywhere. "Has anyone reviewed yesterday's intercept data?" she asked. A few heads turned. "That's not your department, ma'am," one of them said lately. "Then whose is it?" she said. No one answered. She walked up to the main console and studied the screen herself, scanning the blips and transponder codes. Her brow furrowed slightly. There, one ping that didn't match the registry. A foreign signature, just for a second, then gone. When she turned back, the room was quiet. "You missed this," she said softly. The technician frowned. "That's impossible." "It's gone now, but next time check Sector 9. They stared at her. Nobody ever checked Sector 9. It was considered a dead zone, outdated sensors, broken for months. As she left, a few whispers followed her again. "Who does she think she is? No one checks Sector 9. She didn't respond. just kept watching down the hall, expression unreadable. That night, she sat alone in her quarters, a single lamp glowing on her desk. The ocean wind pressed faintly against the window. She opened a small, worn leather folder and unfolded a single document, her classified transfer order, marked "For internal eyes only." At the top, her full title was printed in bold: Rear Admiral Tessa Holt, Command Oversight, Northern Defense Base. She stared at it for a long time, then folded it back carefully. Tomorrow, she thought, they'd test her, and she'd let them. Because that was how you learned who was really in charge. By sunrise, the airbase was already rumbling awake, engines testing, alarms echoing, and the chatter of crews filling the corridors. The new girl was early as always. She moved through the control deck with quiet precision, a clipboard in hand, noting details no one else noticed. Reese spotted her from across the room and exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Harris. "She's making rounds again," he muttered, "trying to look important." Harris grinned. "Should we tell her she's not in charge of operations?" Reese smirked. "No, let her figure it out the hard way." She approached them calmly, eyes scanning the morning flight board. "Patrol Group 3 is leaving 5 minutes early. Why?" Reese raised an eyebrow. "Because I told them to." "You just cut 15 minutes from radar warm-up time," she said evenly. "That's sloppy." Reese leaned forward. "You've been here, 2 days? You don't give orders around here." She didn't flinch. "I didn't," she said softly. "I gave advice. You chose to ignore it." The air between them froze for a beat before she turned and walked away, leaving him staring after her. Later that day, word spread across the base. The new girl had corrected Reese's patrol schedule. By lunch, the entire hangar was buzzing with quiet laughter and exaggerated impressions of her calm tone. She ignored them all. At the mess hall, a group of pilots sat together at one table. As she entered, conversation dimmed. One of them, Callahan, the youngest but loudest of the group, grinned and raised his voice just enough for her to hear. "Guess command sending us babysitters now." The table laughed. She walked right past them, set her tray down alone, and began eating without a word. Callahan called out again. "Hey, new girl, what's your actual job anyway?" She looked up, her eyes steady. "To make sure no one crashes this base into the sea." That earned another round of laughter, nervous this time. Across the room, Harris watched the exchange with mild discomfort. "She doesn't even blink," he muttered. Reese shrugged. That's what happens when people think they're untouchable. That evening, a sudden alert broke the monotony. The control tower lights flashed red. An unidentified radar contact had appeared near the western perimeter. Within seconds, the command room filled with officers scrambling into position. "Sector 9, someone shouted. "We've got a ping in Sector 9. Reese's head snapped up. "Sector 9? That's a dead zone. What?" He stopped mid-sentence. She was already there, standing behind the radar officer's chair, eyes locked on the screen. "Zoom in," she said. The tech hesitated. "Ma'am, the sensors aren't calibrated for that area." "Do it anyway." He followed orders. The screen sharpened just enough to show a faint echo, a signal moving slowly, staying just outside their detection range. "That's not weather," she said. Reese frowned. "It's probably interference." "Interference doesn't move with intent," she replied quietly. He stared at her for a moment, thrown off by her confidence. Then she turned toward him. "Authorized drone recon." He blinked. "What? That's my call, not yours." "Then make it," she said, eyes narrowing just slightly. He hesitated. The room was silent, everyone watching. For reasons he couldn't explain, he nodded. "Launch it." Minutes later, the drone feed appeared on the monitor. Static at first, then a dark shape appeared over the ocean. A vessel, small and unmarked, drifting too close to the boundary line. "Foreign surveillance boat," she said immediately. "Probably testing our response times." Reese turned toward her. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because they did the same thing 3 months ago, at my last base." The room fell into stunned quiet. Reese opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally he muttered, "Lucky guess." But it wasn't. Everyone could tell. When the drone confirmed her assessment, an unregistered signal buoy attached to the ship's hull, Reese's authority started to crumble. The new girl had just exposed a vulnerability his team had ignored for months. Later that night, she walked along the dimly lit dock, the sea wind tugging at her uniform. She heard footsteps behind her. Harris again. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "I just wanted to say, nice call today. You were right." She gave a faint smile. "You didn't think I would be." He laughed softly. "Honestly, no." She looked out at the black waves. "Doubt's healthy. Overconfidence isn't." He nodded, not sure what else to say. After a long pause, he added, "You're not like the others we get transferred here. You don't talk much." "Talking isn't the same as leading," she said. He hesitated. "What did you do before this?" She turned to him, the wind blowing strands of hair across her face. "I observed, and I learned who was worth trusting." Before he could ask more, her pager buzzed. She read the message, her expression hardening. "Command wants the morning briefing moved up. Something's coming." She walked away, leaving Harris standing alone by the water, watching her disappear into the mist. Up in the control tower, Reese stared at the radar map, still unsettled by how fast she had seen what he didn't. For the first time, he wondered who she really was. The next day, he'd get his answer. The morning broke cold and gray, the kind of weather that made even the steel bones of the base groan. Inside the operations hall, the atmosphere was tense. Every officer sat a little straighter when she entered. No one said it, but they all felt it. Something about her had changed. Or maybe they were only now seeing what had been there all along. She took her seat at the end of the long conference table, a stack of reports tucked neatly under her arm. Commander Reese was already there, his expression unreadable. "Morning, everyone," she said, her voice calm as ever. "Let's get started." Reese cleared his throat, trying to reassert control. "Before we begin, I'd like to review yesterday's recon sequence. I think we can agree certain assumptions were exaggerated." She leaned back slightly. "Assumptions? You mean the surveillance ship that entered restricted waters?" Reese hesitated. "That was resolved. Hardly a crisis." She met his eyes. "A hole in our perimeter isn't a crisis yet, until someone decides to use it." The room went silent. Officers exchanged uncertain glances. Then she rose from her seat, walked to the radar display on the far wall, and pointed to a single blinking mark. "This is where your satellite feed goes dark. Sector 9. We've ignored it for months. We won't anymore." Reese forced a smile. "With respect, ma'am, that's not your call." His eyes flicked to him, steady, unreadable. "Then whose is it?" He faltered for a second, then laughed half-heartedly. "You're really something, Holt. You stroll in here, 2 days on base, and think you can run the show?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the operations chief. "Initiate a mock incursion. Sector 9. I want to see response time." Reese slammed a hand on the table. "Stand down, that's an order." But the chief was already moving. Something in her voice, the weight of it, made obedience instinctive. Within seconds, alarms blared through the control center. Screens lit up red. Reese's face drained of color. What the hell? 5 minutes, she said quietly, watching the data. That's how long it takes for this base to even notice a breach. No one dared breathe. Then she turned back to Reese. You're in charge of defense drills, correct? He swallowed. Yes. Then you fix this, she said, before someone else decides we aren't worth defending. Reese opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped. There was something in her eyes he couldn't place. Not anger. Authority. The kind that came from years of command, not weeks of assignment. After the meeting, whispers followed her everywhere. She overstepped. Who does she think she is? She talks like she owns the place. In the hangar, 2 pilots were talking when Harris walked in. She's dangerous, one muttered. Got Reese on edge. Maybe that's what this place needed, Harris said quietly. That night, a classified message came through the comms center, encrypted, high priority. The technician on duty decrypted it halfway before realizing the clearance level. Admiral command. He stared at the screen, pulse quickening. Rear Admiral? The operator called his supervisor over, who read the message twice before whispering, "Oh God, she's the one." By the next morning, the secret was out. When she walked into the control room, everyone stood a little too straight. The silence was thick. She glanced around, calm, composed, as though nothing had changed. Reese was waiting. His voice, when it came, was low. You could have told us. She studied him for a moment. Would it have changed how you treated me? He looked away. Probably not. Then it was necessary, she said, simply. He hesitated, then nodded once. I owe you an apology. You owe the base a better defense, she said. Reese exhaled slowly. Yes, Admiral. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. That night she stood alone on the observation deck again, watching the waves roll against the docks. The radar dishes turned silently above her, glowing faintly under the stars. She finally allowed herself a small smile, not triumph, but relief. They knew now, and maybe, just maybe, they'd start listening. Far below in the hangar, Harris looked up at the tower light where she stood, the figure who had arrived as a stranger, quiet and unnoticed, the one everyone had tried to test. He smiled faintly to himself. The new girl, right. And with that, the base settled under her command, not through fear, not through rank, but through respect earned the hard way. 2 days after the truth spread through the base, the air changed. Everyone moved sharper, quieter. Orders were followed before they were finished. The same people who once smirked when she passed now stood straighter when she entered a room. Respect had replaced rumor. But she knew it wouldn't last unless she earned it when it mattered most. And that moment came sooner than anyone expected. It was 02:13 a.m. when the first alarm broke the night. A long, shrill note that sent men scrambling from bunks and officers running through corridors. Lights flickered red. The radar feed lit up with moving targets. 3 signatures, low and fast, approaching from the North Sea quadrant. Reese burst into the control tower, still buttoning his jacket. Status: unidentified aircraft, no transponder codes, shouted a tech. Speed increasing, 200 knots and climbing. Reese spun toward her. She was already standing over the main display, hair tied back, eyes locked on the screen. Calm, cold, focused. Scramble Interceptor Group 1, she said. The tech hesitated. Ma'am, protocol requires confirmation. I am confirmation, she said quietly. Her tone cut through the chaos like steel through fog. The order went out instantly. Within minutes, the base erupted in controlled fury, engines igniting, searchlights cutting through the mist. The new girl, the Admiral, moved among them with quiet purpose, checking every detail herself. Reese joined her on the observation deck, wind whipping across their faces. Could be a drill from Fleet Command, he said. It's not, she replied. Drills don't jam comms. He frowned. Jammed? She nodded toward the dark horizon. Listen, The usual hum of radio chatter was gone, only static. Reese's voice tightened. They're testing us. They're not testing. They're watching how long we take to fight back. Down below, jets screamed off the runway, streaks of white vapor carving the black sky. On the radar screen, the incoming signals split, one diverting west, two turning directly toward the coast. "Missile lock detected," shouted an operator. "Evasive pattern Delta 5, she ordered. Her voice never rose. "Flak batteries online." Reese glanced at her. The stillness in her face was unnerving. "How are you so sure?" "Because I've seen this before. Same signatures, same approach vector, 2 years ago in the Atlantic." "Enemy probe?" "Worse," she said. "Ghost recon. They disappear before we can identify them." On the monitors, one of the aircraft vanished into cloud cover. Seconds later, a bright flash tore across the sea, an explosion lighting up the horizon. "Interceptor 2 hit!" someone yelled. She leaned forward. "Get me a visual on the wreck." The screen flickered, a grainy image of debris scattering into the water. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't hesitate. "Activate counter-tracking beacons. Deploy sea rescue team. No one left behind." Reese stared at her. "You already had a rescue plan?" "Always," she said. Minutes turned to hours. The unidentified signals retreated, vanishing the same way they'd appeared, silent, mocking. When dawn finally rose, the entire base stood at high alert, exhausted, but alive. By then, she was still there, hands clasped behind her, uniform rumpled, eyes on the sea. Reese approached quietly. "They pulled the pilots out. Alive." She nodded, once. "Good." He hesitated, then said, "You saved the base tonight." She turned to him, expression unreadable. "No, Commander, we did." He exhaled, looking out over the water. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" "Command sent me here because they expected a breach. They just didn't tell you why." Reese studied her for a long time. "You could have started this whole thing differently. You could have told us who you were." She looked back at him, a faint smile on her lips. "If I had, would you have listened?" He didn't answer. The morning light spilled across the hangar, illuminating the crews as they cleaned the decks and refueled the jets. Every person who saw her now looked with something new, not curiosity, not fear, but pride. Later that day, she addressed the entire base on the tarmac, no podium, no microphone, just her voice carrying over the wind. "You all did well," she said simply. "We held our ground because we acted as one. Rank means nothing without discipline, and trust is built, not ordered. Remember that." For a moment, silence. Then applause, quiet at first, then rising until it filled the air, echoing off the hangars. Reese was among them, clapping, eyes lowered slightly. Harris stood nearby, grinning like he hadn't slept in days. When the noise faded, she turned toward the sea again. The horizon was calm now, but she knew better. There was always another test waiting. In the quiet that followed, the radio crackled. A voice from command came through. "Admiral Holt, confirmation received. Excellent work. Northern Defense Base is under your full operational command." She closed her eyes for a brief second, letting the words sink in. Then she said, "Copy that. We're ready." The transmission ended. The wind carried the faint scent of jet fuel and salt water as she walked across the deck, the sun rising behind her, the woman they'd mocked, underestimated, and tried to push aside. Now, she was the reason they still stood. And as the base came back to life around her, no one called her the new girl again.